The real man gains respect by standing between his family and destruction, absorbing the blows of fate with equanimity. In today's world, being honest about how you feel would cost you everything. Although this is not healthy, males have always been expected to keep their cool, show no emotion, and endure whatever comes their way, regardless of the consequences. This rule applies all over the world, from the Japanese samurai warrior who put honor and emotional control above everything else, to the American cowboys of the Wild West who praised tough individualism and self-control, to the Maasai in East Africa who must pass physical tests and promise to be calm no matter what happens in their life. But where did this unwritten rule come from? Why is it that people from different societies that never met actually came up with the same conclusion on what it meant to be a man? Nowadays, you can always find an article that talks about why guys should cry and talk about their feelings. But even in this woke world, we all know that what people say and how they act are very different. The truth is that a crying man is rarely well accepted. This essay gets a lot of its ideas from David Gilmore's book called Manhood in the Making. The first thing that we are going to do is figure out why society says that guys should not cry. We'll understand why crying as a man can ruin your life and the lives of your family, no matter how crazy it sounds. We will also find out the devastating things that happen to women and children when men cry. The truth is that everyone should accept and embrace crying as a normal and healthy emotional response. The issue is that there is a huge gap between an ideal society and the reality of societal expectations and norms. What we can do about this huge gap is the goal of this essay. A man is expected to emerge from the shadow of women and children and take an active part in the ritualized dramas of community life. In many countries around the world, a person is considered male if they were born with male reproductive organs. However, becoming a man is not a natural process that comes with age. It is a status that is carefully built through social and cultural rites of passage. Gilmore's in-depth study of different cultures shows that all over the world, societies have certain rules and challenges that boys and men must solve in order to be seen as real men. From the rigorous warrior initiation ceremonies of the Maasai in East Africa to the tough mental and physical tests that young men in the Amazon have to pass. Becoming a man has been shown to be a complex concept that one must work to achieve. As an example, the Maasai's coming-of-age ceremony includes a painful circumcision that the boy must endure without showing any pain. This is intended to symbolize the transition into the heroic, stoic figure of a warrior man. In the same way, some parts of Papua New Guinea, boys go through hard rituals and are separated from their mothers in order to gain skills, knowledge, and emotional strength that is seen as necessary for becoming a man. Strength, stoicism, provision, and protection are some of the traits that these criteria often stress. These traits are not automatically inherited at birth. Instead, they are taught, learned, and earned through trials and experiences. So this process of cultivation is deeply rooted in the social fabric of many communities. Rituals, stories, and everyday interactions are some of the main ways in which these values are passed down from one generation to the next. But why did all cultures have to build a man? Isn't it interesting that many cultures that had never communicated with each other came to the same conclusion? I will share the answer with you, but you must first know the man's unusual psychological journey. Only then will you easily understand the danger that men who never reach manhood pose to themselves and society. One of the most dangerous things for men is something called psychological regression. Psychological regression is a way for us humans to protect ourselves when we are under a lot of stress, trauma, or problems that are just too hard to handle. Too hard to handle. I'm kidding. Anyway, some of the ways this process shows up in behavior include turning into more childish forms of comfort seeking or avoiding adult responsibilities in favor of numbing out or becoming dependent on other people. In this patriarchal society, boys face a significant challenge on their journey to manhood because they must overcome their initial sense of unity with their mother in order to forge an independent identity that is in line with cultural norms of masculinity. This change is not just a psychological one, it is also a cultural necessity ingrained in socialization rituals and rites of passage in many different communities or societies. Gilmore's research shows that in many cultures, the path to becoming a man includes clear rituals and tests that are meant to break a boy's connection to the feminine and shift his identity towards the masculine. For example, among the Samburu, who are related to the Maasai in East Africa, the boys are taken from their mothers when they are very young and are put to live with male warriors. They do things together that teach them how to be tough, how to endure, and how to fight. This separation, which is both physically real and symbolic, is important for the boy to show the qualities and take on the responsibilities that his culture sees as masculine. In the same way, social honor and virility are seen as important parts of being a man in the Mediterranean societies. Not only do boys have to physically separate from their mothers in order to live in a world dominated by male expectations, they also have to change their behaviors and attitudes to show that they are strong, independent, and assertive, which are often seen as the opposites to caring, emotional, and social traits that are associated with femininity. Cultural practices and rites of passage do two things to the boy. They help the boy become the kind of manly person that the society expects him to be, and they also reinforce the difference between men and women that exists in many societies. By breaking up with his mother, the boy rejects the feminine and adopts a more masculine identity, which is frequently characterized by emotional toughness, physical strength, and social dominance. All of these rituals teach values that are beneficial to both the individual and the society at large. Boys nowadays rarely reach this manhood because of the widespread absence of father figures and the lack of traditional ceremonies, of course. The boys would have to teach themselves by reading books or by finding role models. And also what makes it hard is a negative influence of their peers, social media and traditional media, which just make the problem worse. Boys on the path to manhood are prone to psychological regression at all times and may seek to regress and fall back into the stage where they are free from the tough duties of adulthood. For a boy on the path to manhood, crying a lot might just be a sign that he is reeling back psychologically. Now, it does not mean that crying is a bad thing, but I'm just saying it could be a symptom. And later on, we're going to see how this crying can affect his relationship with a woman. But first, when I was in university, I also went through a lot of tough times. I remember I had to look for over $50,000 in tuition without the help of my parents. And also, I had electrical engineering, which was a very tough degree. And I remember very well that I often felt the need to be freed from my difficulties and duties of adulthood. There was a part of me that just wanted to run back into my mother's house and live an easy life. And I believe that men have to conquer this desire. And unfortunately, in this day and age, with the lack of many father figures, we men are left to teach these qualities to ourselves with very little guidance. Now, being a human or a man is a journey that teaches you how to be brave, strong, resilient, and emotionally stable, wise, independent, self-sacrificing, and honorable. And we all know that someone who is missing these virtues or characteristics is bound to have a very tough time making it through life. I believe that the boys who failed on their journey to manhood, because they were perceived as threats to the patriarchy, these boys or these men who were unable to accomplish this journey were stigmatized. However, what impact does a man's inability to achieve manhood have on his relationships with women and children? Before we go into that, let's first understand what happens to the man who failed to achieve manhood. Now, some cultures had extreme needs like killing a lion. And of course, failure to meet such standards led to low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, social isolation, and aggression, and overcompensation, which I feel like we can still see today. And these are very heavy downsides. And we as society need to find a way of supporting all of men so that they can get these virtues, or all of humans, as we say nowadays, because these traits are not useful to just men, but everybody. But this particular video is focusing on the journey to manhood. Anyway, so for part 2 of this video, which is on women and children. The captain of the ship cannot cry when the storm comes. He scares the rest of the people in the ship. Now, how does crying affect a man's relationship with women? In this current world, we always find articles that talk about why guys should cry, as we've seen earlier. But we all know that the crier is rarely accepted. When you cry and you show all of your emotions as a man, you are normally perceived as weak, not because you are actually weak, but because people unconsciously think that you lack those virtues of manhood. So that is where the problem lies. But before we can go into how this affects women and children, let us first understand the sales game of life. Life is a sales game, and we are all constantly selling ourselves. The best salesman achieves the greatest returns. When you're selling something, you always want to come from a position of strength. And the same goes for the dating game. If we think of a woman called Jessica and she has 2 dates, one is with Bobby and one is with Peter. Bobby and Peter in this example have the same income and mental capabilities. But Peter always complains about his issues and hardships in life. Bobby, on the other hand, despite knowing his struggles, keeps things lighthearted, jokes around, and always displays a promise that he can tackle any situation. Of course, it's very likely that Jessica is going to go date Bobby for the long term because he portrays the feeling that he can overcome any of his issues, which comes from the virtues of manhood that we're talking about. Now, it doesn't matter if he actually has them or not, and that is a topic for another video, but if you express that feeling, then you're likely to win at the dating game. Now, in longer term relationships, I also realized that women love to have a rock besides them. Someone they can always count on, and someone who makes them feel like he can overcome anything. Coming off as weak makes them lose hope in you. And when a woman loses that feeling that you have these beautiful virtues or elements, they normally start to become distant and lose sexual interest. Now, I'm not saying that you should not talk about your problems or cry with your long-term partner. What I'm trying to say is that if you do that or you don't do it, you should always take action, show hope, and confidence that you can get through what you're going to face, even if you're feeling very down. I have also discovered that women will support you when they care and love you, but they will be turned off if you require constant emotional support for an extended period of time. And this means that men should have a group of male friends with whom they can be very vulnerable and share all of their struggles with. This is very useful when their problems are also very, very big and maybe too close for his close family to handle. Going through very long breakdowns in front of women and children without taking action or showing that you have hope of getting through the situation normally creates issues, because you're normally seen as the captain of the ship, and when the storm comes, he, the captain, must stay on the helm and steer the passengers to safety. Everyone on the ship is at risk of dying if this captain runs away from his job and tries to become a passenger. If you've enjoyed this video, then you're likely to enjoy this video on Stoicism, which is a philosophy that teaches many of these virtues. Thank you.